Hi there. This is probably the world's most basic introduction to getting to know Adobe Edge Animate in the Creative Cloud. Now, when you first open up Edge Animate, this is the introduction screen that you get. Within it, we have a what's new, getting started, resources type of interface here, but for the purposes of this little tutorial, to make it nice and simple, to begin with, all we're going to do is come over to this little button here that says Create New. Now, when we are originally presented with our screen, what we have is basically 4 tabs. Now, those tabs include our stage area here, which you can see starts out as just a white area. We have the elements that we are finding within our project. We have the properties of those individual elements, and down the bottom here we have our timeline. And you can see if I grab my little slider here, that is moving along our timeline, and we'll get into that in a moment. Now, for the purposes of this very basic introduction, all I'm going to do is come up to the basic shapes here, and I'm going to start to create very basic shapes within the program itself. For more advanced projects, what I would probably get a student to do is create more advanced things in either Photoshop or Illustrator and import them in from there. But for the purposes of this basic introduction, I'm just going to use the tools that are available within Edge Animate itself. So what I'll do, firstly, I'll grab an ellipse, and what I'll do, I'm just going to create an ellipse directly on the stage by clicking and dragging, and I'm going to leave it at that stage. What I can now see is I've got my stage, which we originally began with, and I have my ellipse. Now, what I've got here are the properties for that ellipse. Now, those things can be individually changed, and they can be moved around in terms of position, scale, size. We can transform them by typing in specific values that will relate to the X and Y axes on the grid here, or for the purposes of being nice and basic for students, we can physically move and drag this around. Now, how do I do that? Well, very simple. What I do is I grab my toggle pin, and I'll just click my toggle pin on. You'll see that it appears here in blue. Imagine that is pinning the start of your animation. I then grab my little yellow time slider and I say for, let's say, 2 seconds. For that duration that you see it appear there, I'm going to get my ellipse and say I want my ellipse for a period of 2 seconds to go from there by clicking and dragging. I want to go from there to there. It automatically creates that little piece of animation for you. It's said that it's going from those values to those values, and I've done that by clicking and dragging and making a gross movement. Now, I can turn my pin back off. I can slide my timeline back and forth, and I can preview it by clicking play. Simple. Over the course of 2 seconds, that's what it's done. But what if I wanted to do more? Come back to the beginning. Not only do I want it to go from there to there, I also would like it to do some other things along its way. So if I say, right, pin on from there to there, I also would like it to grow. I want it to scale while it does it. So now I've got not only going from top left to top bottom, I've got it going top left, top bottom, going from the top left to the bottom right. I've also now got my ellipse scaling up. So let's turn my toggle pin back off, come back to the beginning. Now when I press play, it goes down and it grows. Great. Let's come back to the beginning. Now, what I'm now going to drop in is some text. So I say, let's put in a little bit of text. I drag out a text box. I'll type in my text box. Let's say that I'm doing an assignment on reptiles. I want my reptiles little text box to start off the screen, so I'm just going to drag it and put it over there for now. I've now got some text here. If I click on it twice slowly, I get the option to change the title so I don't get myself confused. And right, let's go. Right, I don't want to affect my stage, that's the one I'm clicked on now. I want to affect the reptiles little layer here. So during this same period of time, this same 2-second period, I also want that reptile's title to come in, and I want it to land in the center of that ellipse. So I come to there and I want this to fly in right there. Turn my pin back off, come back to the beginning, and those two things will happen in conjunction to one another. They're actually both going to happen at the same time, because we can see that they're both happening over that 2-second duration, and they're both independently moving due to the controls that we've asked it to do. Click play, in it comes, lands together. Alright, what if I also want something else to happen? That's fine. Let's say we also want that to come in. We then want it to land in the center of that ellipse, and we then want it to fade out. We want it to go to nothing. So from 2 seconds to 3 seconds, the reptiles will go from 100% visible to invisible, 100% opacity to 0% opacity. Let's turn the pin back off. We go back to the beginning. We now come in and fade out. Nice and simple. And any of these properties can be affected in that same way. So if I now say, what about I want to get a second piece of text to come in, and I want a second piece of text to come in from there when everything else has completed. I'll turn my toggle pin on, I'll create another text box, and I will put in another title here, and let's just say, for the purposes of this, I can't think of anything brilliant, so I'm just going to write test, but I want test to appear, I want it to start with 0% opacity, and I want it to, over the course of 1 second, so from 3 seconds to 4, I want it to go from invisible, 0% opacity, to visible, and I would also like it to change colour. I'd like it to change to red during that period of time. Let's make it a nice bright red, and I'm going to keep it up there in that top left hand corner. Great. Let's turn our pin back off, go back to the beginning, and we'll hit play. Reptiles, fades out, test, comes on black, fades through to red. Now, as you can see, I've now got a few layers that have begun to build up. We can import things out of Illustrator and Photoshop to drop them in. We can grab any images that we like, and we simply start to just work with this timeline and change the properties of the individual components that we put onto the page to create a fairly slick looking, essentially basic animation / slideshow, whatever we want to do. Now, those individual components, we can start to add in ActionScript. We can start to add in buttons and playheads and all kinds of information to put in there. So if I actually click on a layer, if I right click on the layer, and then I actually start to say, well, how about we actually start to put in some actions? I can say when clicked, when double clicked, when I mouse over it, it will do that action only when those things happen. But that's for a more in-depth tutorial. We'll leave that alone for this very, very basic introduction as I originally started to describe. The other very nice feature that I'll finish up on is what will this look like when viewed online. It is HTML5 animation. What's it going to look like when it's dropped into a website? So let's just say, File, Preview in browser. Simple as that. Or I can Command Enter. Previewed in a browser. Perfect. That's what it would look like on a website. So I hope that that was nice and easy to follow and of benefit for people who are using Edge Animate for the very, very first time, and it will get you started working on this timeline. Thank you very much for watching.